Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
Tyler, great video.
And you're already writing. Go ahead. Here's Bob. Okay. While we're getting situated, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much to the Board of Trade for this opportunity. Thank you, Jack and George and Jackie and everyone for bringing us together on this topic. And I want to thank Willie and Tyler both for great overviews, great introduction. I tell you, my favorite piece of mail to get is the one that compares my energy usage to my neighbor's energy use, right?
And
see how well I'm doing.
Always worse than them. That's why it's
Yeah, it's a little competitive. It's a little competitive. You know, it's great. As Tyler said, my name's Khademian. I'm the executive director at the universities at Shady Grove. We're part of the University System of Maryland. So we spend a lot of time thinking about talent development, strategic talent development, and how we can better align with the workforce needs of our region and our state and meet that talent demand, because we believe talent development drives economic development. It's also a huge part of energy and what we're doing here as well. We also spend a lot of time thinking about how we can help the system be more effective and more synergistic. So questions around data centers and compute powers, and these things are very central to what we're doing. We have a great panel here today to talk about where we go from here. Some very creative thinkers and doers. I loved it that Tyler said, you know, let's start doing things. Let's stop thinking about it and let's do it. Let's build and do and create what we need to do. And I love it that Willie challenged us to be visionary and to think big and to do some big things as well. And I think you'll hear some big things here today on our panel. So I'm going to ask each of our panel members to introduce themselves briefly and take just a minute to tell us what is the biggest shift that's happening right now, the headline, in energy today that's a little bit different. And then we'll dig into that a little bit more as well. So, Bob, why don't you start?
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for having me. This is fun, I have to say. We're seeing a seminal change in the provision of electricity and the emergence, obviously, of AI. I am a co-founder of a company called FLEXNODE, which we started in 2020 to deal with the sustainability issues and the growing demand for data centers. Of course, AI wasn't in most people, virtually anybody here, AI was not in their lexicon on a daily basis. Come 2022, OpenAI announced ChatGPT, and the world changed. And we jumped onto that horse and started running, and it continues to change exponentially, almost daily. And as much as we know, there's a lot more that we don't know, and we're going to see emerge over time. So I'm just, at this point, I love the fact that Anne is out there and Jack trying to educate everybody, because nobody really has a firm grip on what's about to happen or what is happening, and it'll change. And we all need to understand that. So with that.
Well, what do you think is the biggest shift that's happening that everyone needs to be
Everybody, the biggest shift, and I can get into this later, right now, is what we're reading, all the news articles and so forth, are about the large language model data centers, the 1 gigawatts that I'm sure, every power company is trying to figure out how to provide. What we do and what I think is happening is shift to inference. And that's when we'll really get, particularly businesses, will get their hands and be able to use the efficiency of AI. And inference has its own set of issues, but it does not need 1 gigawatt. And that's why you see in these legislations like the one, the moratorium New York just passed, there's an exemption for anything 20 megawatts and below. And that is because 20 megawatts and below is inference, and it doesn't need those giant data centers. What it does need is, it needs to be close to the source of use with very little latency, and it needs to be highly reliable and secure. But it's a different issue. I think one of the things that I can come here and just say, one of the things to understand is there are different kinds of demands on this market, and some they all have different challenges.
So we'll talk more about that as we go along.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Carol.
Hey, good morning, and thanks for including me in this panel. So I'm Carol Lane, Senior Vice President of Government Relations for Exet. Whoops, I didn't turn it on.
Let me check mine.
Okay, does that work now? Okay. Carol Lane, Senior Vice President at X Energy for Government Relations. X Energy is an advanced nuclear reactor design and fuel manufacturing company. We're what's called an advanced reactor, next generation reactor, which I can spend a little more time on. But we won our first contract with Department of Energy in 2020. It's a 50-50 partnership to build a first reactor, first-of-a-kind reactor. We're teamed or partnered with Dow Chemical as well as Department of Energy, and we'll be deploying that first plant down in Cedar, Texas. And what's interesting, and I'll talk more about this later, is that we will provide both electricity and high-temperature steam, which really expands the markets that nuclear can feed into. The biggest shift I've seen, and actually I think Willie just articulated it so well this morning, is we've really gone from, keeping the lights on economically and affordably to energy becoming really a strategic enabler, and not just in terms of our consumer lifestyle and all of that within this country, but in AI, domestic manufacturing, onshoring or reshoring of supply chain, and national security. And that shift, I think, is really one of the most fundamental shifts that we're going to see. So we're going from energy being really an operating expense for most people to a strategic advantage or competitive advantage. And I think how we then deploy our assets, how investments are made, and how we look forward in terms of the both state competitions as well as global competitions is really going to be made on the entirety of those decisions.
Thank you, Carol. Ali.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ali Mehrizi-Sani, and I'm a professor and Bradley Senior Fellow at Virginia Tech. How many of you are a Hokie or have a family member who is a Hokie? Or know somebody who is a Hokie? I need to get a lot of hands up. I also direct our Power and Energy Center. I'm a professor of electrical engineering. I work on our power systems, looking at challenges related to integration of renewables, the control, protection, optimization, cybersecurity. We have also been working on, of course, large loads, and a big example of those is data centers, something that's, of course, of everybody's mind today. In terms of what I think about the biggest shift, biggest challenge is, what I would say is, for years, we have been thinking about essentially a power grid or energy transition. What we are experiencing today is more of an energy expansion. So for years, conversation was about, hey, how can we essentially replace some source of our generation from, say, fossil fuels to other sources that are cleaner, more affordable, more reliable, and more sustainable. The challenges that we are seeing today are far more greater. There's, of course, we need way more electricity, way more energy. We need it very fast, we need it very reliable, and we are also dealing, as I said earlier, we are also dealing with just a new breed of loads that they are huge and they have these new characteristics. Thinking about, for example, data centers, their power demands are not constant. So they may use a lot of power at this instant. Next instant, like when interference actually is done, then you may just have just a little bit of energy. To deal with those rapid changes in the amount of power that you draw from the grid, that actually needs a new rethinking of our power system. So we need to think about all the challenges that come with that, the generation side, the transmission side, and of course, a lot of questions about policy, regulation, and talent.
Thank you. Thank you. Is my microphone on?
No.
I don't know. There it goes.
The power saving
Yeah, I'm saving those kilowatts. It's on. There it goes. Can you hear me now? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. All right. So let's shift gears from that. I think we'll come back to all the points you've raised about inference, about strategic shifting, about the demand. We'll come back to all of those as we go along. But Carol, let's zoom in and focus on nuclear power, right? A lot of times we think about the energy challenge as a production challenge, but it's a transmission challenge, it's a workforce challenge, it's a permitting challenge, there's all kinds of, it's a public perception challenge as well. So as you look at what it's going to take to make these small modular reactors effective and really be a major contributor to our energy needs and demands, what is it going to take? What are some of the components of this broader ecosystem they're going to have to align in order for this to happen?
So it's kind of interesting. I actually, X-Energy was started in 2009. I started there in 2015. There were about 10 of us, and we've just topped 1,000 people. So it's been a huge growth over the past 10 years. And I'll talk about the three things that I think have really come together to make a change. But one of the biggest ones, when we won this contract in 2020, what I saw it as, and I think a lot of people in the company did, is that we were pushing technology. We were trying to get people to understand what the value of new nuclear was, how you can build reactors safer, smaller, more economical, and it was really a technology push. What's changed in the past 18 months to 2 years is it's become a market pull. So that's really made us think about scaling differently in the context of how do we get to market as fast as we can. That being said, it's still difficult to get a first of a kind up and running, and we really won't have new reactors operating until the early 2030s. But we're moving forward, and we're moving forward very quickly, and I think that's really, really positive. So I look at it as policy and politics coming together with the technical status of where SMRs are, and then the financial community. So let me talk about each one really quickly. On the policy side, I would say the Congress has really been what I call policy forward on nuclear energy for the past 5 years. They have passed numerous bills dealing with funding the first-of-a-kind reactors, redoing the framework for regulating nuclear reactors, particularly SMRs, tax incentives, workforce issues, and these have all been done on a bipartisan basis, and they've enacted this legislation. And they really have been ahead of the curve of public policy, public perception, which is, I just think, a really unique political environment to be in. So we've enjoyed support from the end of the Obama administration, first Trump administration, Biden administration, and now this administration has been doing quite a bit. So politically, I think the federal politicians have really been ahead of the state and local entities. So we've also included as part of that, and we recognize this, outreach is a very important thing. Educating people on this is a different kind of nuclear reactor, what its advantages are, which I'll talk about in a second, play a very important role in our being able to deploy, and we really feel we need the social license to be able to get these deployed in a speed that is required by the data centers and hyperscalers and stuff like that. So that's been very critical and has kind of set the environment for us. Technically, SMRs are really not new technology. A lot of the first ones going to market are technologies that have been tried before. They're being downsized, if you will, and we're working on supply chain issues and different ways of deploying them. But so we're not really breaking ground from a technology standpoint, which is a good thing, because we believe these reactors will work when they get to market. We are building a high-temperature gas reactor, which means we do not have water in our core. We have high-temperature helium in our core, so it can't melt down. Our fuel, I love to bring it with me, is actually these pebbles. About 220,000 of these go into our reactor core. You can think of a school bus turned vertically with these pebbles in it, and then we flow helium gas through the reactor core. That, because of these two features, the safety involved in our fuel, as well as the use of helium and not water in our reactor core, have changed the dynamics of how the Nuclear Regulatory Commission license us from a safety perspective. What that means practically is, to the point you were making, we can co-locate a lot closer than the current fleet of reactors. Our first plant down at Dow, we're building 4 reactors for a plant of 320 megawatts. Will be within 1.5 miles of their chemical facility. They're going to power their chemical facility with our high temperature steam, as well as use the electricity for their site, and they'll put some back on the grid. So, you know, we've got more geographic flexibility. We've got safety features that allow us to co-locate closer to the user, which is important. And the key thing, which was also just mentioned, is, you know, for the first time, the reliability that's really needed for data centers is 99.999% reliability. And that is driving, I think, also the use of nuclear power for to meet this infrastructure that we're trying to do. And then finally, I think the financial community has recognized this. We've been out in the commercial markets and have raised over $1 billion, $1.5 billion, and then we just went public in April. So I think there's a broader recognition of these things coming together and looking at how we deploy this kind of technology.
I also just want to, this doesn't work either. I also just want to note, though, how X Energy has had such a powerful vision and has brought so much, excuse the pun, energy to this effort as well. I think others are coalescing around that, too. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob, I've heard you say not all data centers are created equal or the same, right? Mm-hmm. And I wonder if could you share with us what you think some of the misconceptions are about these data centers? Maybe this is where you draw an inference as well. But what some of the opportunities are that we might not be as obvious to us right now.
That's a good question. And it's not obvious generally, because we see the headlines, but we don't see actually what's happening. And even the industry is struggling to see what is actually happening. So the headlines we see is they want to build a 1.5 gigawatt facility in Kansas or wherever it is. Who wants, people don't want to live next to a data center. I wouldn't. I'm sure nobody else would. And that's stirring a lot of community backlash. Not to mention that a lot of those big data centers, and historically they've been using air to cool those data centers. That air actually creates a lot of noise, which is going to get people cranky. But that's the big ones, and there are a lot. But what do the big ones do? They build the models. So if you go out and you see some of these autonomous vehicle testing, they're collecting data to know exactly what that model looks like. And the more data they have, the more reliable those models are. And so they're always seeking more data. That's not what inference is. Inference is using that model to take advantage of the efficiencies it was designed to offer. And that could be autonomous vehicles, or it could be health related. There's sort of a never-ending list of possible applications, but those are inference. And those, as I said before, are 20 megawatts. And they're generally not air-cooled, they're liquid-cooled. Ours is liquid-cooled through a closed-loop system, so we use virtually no water. It just goes around in a circle. So the issue we have for the inference is that needs to be low latency. Because if you're, whatever it is, maybe it's gunshot detection in a city, you need to have that information, or an accident, or traffic. You need to have that information almost instantaneously. So we need to come closer into the urban areas. Luckily, we're able to do that because our size is, say, 30 feet by, say, 20 feet, plus some electrical gear. So it's not impossible to find, and in fact, we're finding a lot of it snuck away, like in substations of the utilities. That we've seen utility substations having 20, 30, 40 excess megawatts of power, but you got to dig for it. But if the goal is to be close so you can take advantage of the AI models, then you're going to have to come closer to the city. And that's what I think is the big change that's happening right now. And I think probably right now we're probably seeing 50% large language model data centers and 50% inference. And I think over the next couple years that'll probably move 60, 40, 70, 30 or something to that effect. And then you're going to see the demand from the enterprise world for those inference capabilities because they want their efficiencies. If you're on a board of directors of a public company and you're seeing, oh, my competitor is already up and operating, they bought their own data center, inference data center, or they're sharing it, or they're leasing capacity. We've just seen the beginning of this. And it's going to have new demands, and those demands, some of them as I said before, we don't know what they are today. But there's going to be a lot. I was lucky enough to go a couple months ago to go out to AstraZeneca's research facility out in Gaithersburg, which was very impressive. And you start looking at biotech. The public good of their goal, which is Lilly's goal and so forth, to cut down the time it takes to commercialize a new medicine, which is probably around approximately 8 years today. They want to cut that down to 4 years. Think of the implications of that from the greater community. And that's exciting.
Thank you so much. Ali, could you talk with us, you raised the other day in our conversation that why do you think we're building all these data centers? Like, it's not just that people want to build data centers, right? There's a demand for them.
Yeah.
And talk to us a little bit about, from where you sit with your research and the team at Virginia Tech, what are some of the mind shift challenges that we have in terms of getting the public on board with some of the things that have to happen so that we can transform the grid and do this work as well?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And we don't build data centers because we love data centers, right? I mean, if I were making money, maybe, but I'm not, and most of us not. So we build data centers because we actually use the services that those data centers provide. So Friday evenings, probably we do quite a bit of online shopping, right? A lot of our banking is online, government services are online. We may watch a lot of cat videos, even though we may not actually admit. So all of those actually go through data centers. I think Tyler mentioned that average person, even if you are not sitting in front of a computer, you're going to be in and out of data centers 1,000 times a day. So part of that mindset shift that you mentioned, and is actually happening, or actually happened already. We are relying on services of data centers every day or every minute of the day. What needs to happen is we need to become conscious about it, right? We need to know that how much we are using those data centers. We may not love data centers themselves, right? Bob mentioned he doesn't want to live close to data centers, but somebody has to live close to data centers. Somebody has to have those data centers in in the close proximity of where they live. So I would say probably the main mindset shift is for us to maybe stop thinking of data centers as just a facility and start thinking of them as part of our digital infrastructure. Even if we don't like AI, they are part of our digital infrastructure. That's actually part of the modern life already. So, I mean, we talk about our energy delivery infrastructure, we talk about our transportation infrastructure, and data centers are just a part of the modern lives anymore.
Thank you. I'm going to give up on the microphone. I'm just going to talk loud, so use my teaching voice. I want us to kind of bring all of this together now and think about the region as a whole. None of these solutions stand in a vacuum, right? We need workforce to do this work. We need to modernize the grid. We need space. We need collaboration. We need planning. All of these things need a bigger picture. If our region is to actually lead on this and not just react, what are some first steps that we need to take in order to be in the forefront, to make that big move that Willie was challenging us to think about? And Ali, maybe we start with you.
Sure. I just mentioned that we need to start thinking about data centers as part of our infrastructure. And I would also say that part of maybe the first step is actually to start thinking about our digital infrastructure, our energy infrastructure, as part of the broader infrastructure discussion. I mean, there is the electricity, the power grid planning that has to go on. There is the data center siting projects and development project that has to go on. There is, of course, the big question of economic development and what economic development with data centers, with this new sort of infrastructure is going to bring. So what I would say is we need to really think about all of these together. I forgot whether it was Tyler or Willie mentioned the great example of our interstate system. When President Eisenhower was essentially need to think about this, I mean, they could fund individual projects or they could fund a system. And they went the system route. And I would say we need to actually replicate that sort of thinking, that we need to have essentially a system that brings together these multiple infrastructures together. And instead of looking at, again, the big elephant in the room, data centers project by project, maybe we should start looking at them like at the housing project, that you prepare sites and then different developers come in and put their homes there.
I totally agree, and just to amplify on that a little bit, I think what's really going to drive some of these, I guess, changes in terms of economic growth is going to be how we think about where we put energy and where we do the development. Because whether you think of it from a state level or a region level or a country level, the investment, the growth, the manufacturing are all going to be done surrounding the data centers and the energy centers. And so, you know, what we're seeing on a state level, while I will say it's kind of interesting. There was an article, it was either in Forbes or Fortune a couple of months ago, and it said people would rather live near nuclear reactors than data centers. And I thought, never in my lifetime did I ever think I would see that. So, I mean, the shift is just crazy. Yeah. In the nuclear industry world, we keep saying to each other, you know, like, how could data centers have gotten the PR so wrong? So we've been suffering for it for a number of years. So it's a really interesting dynamic. But what will happen and what we're starting to see are states that have not had the economic growth that Virginia has had, particularly with being the data center leader of the world, that have been much poorer from an economic standpoint, much poorer from an education standpoint, are welcoming these companies and are welcoming the industries, and they see it as an economic boom. You look at the investment that the hyperscalers have made in Arkansas, Texas, well, Texas is a more higher economic state, but Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana are really like Wyoming. They're groping for industry to come in and build and get that economic growth. So I think it becomes a bit of a choice in terms of how the area, the state, or the region want to participate and shape the future of the country. And I think it needs to be thought of in those bigger terms. And then just from a global standpoint, China right now, I mean, the amount of energy that they're building is really incomprehensible. It's larger than any other country in the world. Just on the nuclear side, they're building 19 new nuclear reactors for 39 gigawatts of power. Whoever has abundant power, that's where all these investments are going to go, and they see it as a race. Both AI, quantum, medicine, I mean, all kinds of different areas. So totally agree that, you know, we as both from the local level up to the federal level need to think of it in a broader context.
And your earliest point too, Carol, about the strategic shift, right?
Yeah.
Around this, that's really captured by your example with China, I think, as well.
Absolutely.
How are you going to say
Just a sentence I wanted to add. So I was listening to radio yesterday, and I think our lawmakers knew this for some time, but it became public yesterday, that the state of Virginia had a budget surplus of just under 7%. That's about $950 million, so just under $1 billion. A lot of that is because of the extra collection of income taxes, and I haven't seen the distribution of where that money comes from, but data centers, even though in full-fledged mode, they don't hire a lot of people, but the few people they hire, they're actually higher income people. They still do hire more than 100,000 people a year. So part of that could be actually because of the data centers.
That's a great point. Great point. Bob.
Well, I think, first of all, events like this one are really important to educate the community, the stakeholders, and the public. Because, you know, people scream, and that's what you hear. And this is an opportunity that's unparalleled in my mind, certainly, probably since the electricity was put into our homes in the original grid in the late 1880s. And maybe even more, because the efficiencies are just so enormous that it'll allow us to do a lot. And I think, you know, 5 years, 10 years down the road, that we're going to see virtually everyone using daily AI capabilities. So one of the things I think we need to do, is beyond educating the public, is we need to recognize, and Ann and I have had this discussion a bunch, that no one in the near future should come out of any public or private university, college, community college without being AI literate. And the universities, particularly the research universities, need to be empowered to find different uses that improve our world. And you know, that needs the backing politically from the people who are paying for the universities, our research centers. But we do, in my mind, that's just critical to the development. And for this community is unparalleled in many respects. We have incredibly interesting companies here with large workforces that will all use AI. We have the federal government, which is huge. We saw a request for proposals, an RFP, about 8 weeks ago from the Department of Defense, asking what was called the Defense Innovation Unit, DIU. They want modular data centers because it's a part of the way they're viewing the world has changed in terms of defense and of war, and they want a lot of them. And those kinds of things are really going to be important. And I know when we talked about the Highway Act, and I went back and looked because I thought I was right, it's actually called the Interstate and Defense Highway Act. And the word defense got in there because as sort of a kicker to get political support. And this is going to be the government, which we are the center of. We have 2 universities within almost walking distance here are the 2 leading universities in research in the world. And we should, I know they're doing things, but we need to bring them out and incorporate them to what we are doing here today, education, and make sure that we have everybody AI literate.
Great. So I'm going to wrap this up with a final rapid fire question for all of our panelists. But I want to just say, one of the things that we've been thinking of at the universities at Shady Grove in the system is consortium approaches to AI compute and to data center, and using kind of the surgical use of AI so that you can be more efficient in how you use it. But really bringing people together to be very conscious about the decision that we need AI compute power, and we're going to use it for good, and we're going to drive it in a particular way. So if you were to leave a message for Governor Westmore, who might be listening now, and he might be here listening, what is the one thing that we could do? I'm going to put on the table a consortium approach to AI compute power, but what is one thing that we could do to really unlock the possibilities of this next generation of electricity and the energy we need? Carol?
Well, I will say I think the Governor Moore's administration has been very positive in looking at the energy issues and the importance of it, and recognize the need for the state of Maryland to develop power generation within the state greater than it currently has. So I give them a lot of credit for that. But it does take the communities getting behind that and to make that happen. I mean, Maryland's been a very difficult state from the standpoint of where it gets its energy from and how much control over it has and how that's impacted the overall prices and stuff like that, and cost to consumers. So it's a little more challenging, I think, than other states are, and they're a little bit, I think, behind the curve in terms of recognizing that. So I give the Moore administration a lot of credit for recognizing it. I think that continuing to look at where there's options to be additive in the energy arena is really important for the state and the area.
Great. Bob?
The state and the governor have already started a process working with Anthropic to bring AI to the state. And I think that's great. We need more of that. We need encouragements, incentives, whatever we can. If we want to be the leader, and it's open for grabs right now, in the deployment of new technologies based on AI, then we need to make sure we have that AI available to a broader stroke. AI is not cheap at all. And to make that available, starting with the universities or so forth, would be truly powerful and would make the state a national leader.
Ali, last word.
Yeah, and I'm from Virginia, so I hope. So maybe a message to my governor too. And she's great. She is fantastic. So as a university professor, I see brilliant talent every day, and if I were to pick one area, I would say would be investing in talent. We often focus on technology, but technology doesn't innovate itself. People do. And in this area, Maryland, DC, Virginia, we have a lot of necessary ingredients. We have, of course, the huge presence of the federal government, the contractors, huge use of data, huge set of generating data. And what I would like to see is government, industry, universities getting together and create seamless pathways for developing talent, retaining talent, or even importing talent. And if we have the right talent, everything else is going to become much easier. Innovation becomes much easier. Economic development is going to be much easier as well. So.
Love that answer. All right, with that, let's give a hand to our panel.
Thank you.
We're all set? Okay, great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Carol, thank you so much.